J.D. Vance was booed in a huge auditorium filled with firefighters. Now, the corporate mainstream media has already picked up on this, and they're claiming that it's a bad thing for Donald Trump and J.D. Vance. Likewise, Democrat influencers like MeidasTouch are claiming that it's a devastating blow for the Trump campaign. But I would like to argue something else. I would like to argue that it was actually a good thing that J.D. Vance was booed. And here's the thing, even if you disagree with me, even if you disagree with my assessment, the reality is that by the end of the speech, the entire auditorium was roaring with cheers for J.D. Vance. In other words, he was able to turn the tide. He was able to win the crowd over by talking about his policies, by talking about the agenda that Trump and Vance would carry out if they win the White House. So here's how the whole thing went down. It began a day prior when Tim Walz came in to speak to the International Association of Firefighters, IAFF, and Tim Walz was greeted with cheers. It was a warm reception. Here's what that looked like.
Well, good morning. I know you got a lot of important business.
Again, it was warm cheers. It's not like it was thunderous applause or anything, but pretty receptive, pretty welcoming crowd. But when J.D. Vance showed up, it was a stark difference. You could hear boos as he was trying to begin his speech.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Well, Semper Fi, guys. We got some, it sounds like we got some fans and some haters. That's okay. Listen.
Now, that clip is a little deceptive because the boos were a lot more intense than what that audio sounds like. There are other angles taken from within the crowd, and the booing, again, is just very intense. Now, because of the way that those videos were embedded on their websites, I was unable to download them to share with you guys, but you can tell that the booing was worse because of the way the microphone is positioned, right? The microphone was the single source of sound for that clip, and the microphone is facing towards J.D. Vance because it's meant to pick up his speech. And because it's facing J.D. Vance, that means it's facing away from the crowd. So the fact that the microphone, which is facing away from the crowd, is even able to pick up those boos really tells you how intense it was in the room. So J.D. Vance held his calm, he held his composure. Now, why would I argue that that's a good thing? Well, the International Association of Firefighters is the largest union for firefighters in the country. And like most unions, this one leans to the left. And who did they endorse in 2020? Well, the IAFF endorsed Joe Biden for president of the United States. And they did this over a year. They did this in 2019, over a year before the general election. So they didn't even wait to see who the final two candidates were going to be, right? Because 2019 still would have been the primary process. The general election didn't kick in until the summer of 2020. So they endorsed Joe Biden really early and they stuck with it. Compare that to 2016. The IAFF, according to the New York Times, they were almost going to endorse Hillary Clinton, but they backed away from the endorsement because of some blowback, but they just didn't endorse anyone. In other words, they were poised to again endorse another Democrat. They just sat 2016 out. Now, there are going to be some viewers who say, well, boos, no matter what the context, are a bad thing. But I would argue that this proves that Trump and Vance are the actual unity candidates. Not only have they gotten the endorsements of Democrats or former Democrats like RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, and apparently there are a lot more high-profile ones on the way, but they're going into territory which is usually hostile towards Republicans. I would like to argue this. If a generic Republican, George W. Bush, Mitt Romney, the original George Bush, George H.W. Bush, went in to speak in front of the teachers union, do you really think that they would be cheered? I would expect some boos. I don't think that IAFF was booing J.D. Vance specifically or booing Vance just because he's tied to Trump. I think that given the history of the union endorsing Democrats, that they would have booed any Republican, a generic Republican. To me, this is a good thing because it shows that the Republican ticket is committed to being a ticket that represents all Americans. They're trying to win voters even outside of their tent, outside of their bubble, outside of their base. This is them giving an olive branch and saying, hey, we're going to work to win your votes. Your union has historically not endorsed our side, but we still want to talk to you. We still want to include you. We still want to engage in dialogue. So the fact that they were booed is a good thing. because it shows that the Republicans are willing to show up and play ball. It shows that the Republicans are willing to reach across the aisle, to, I'm going to use the C word. When have you heard the C word? It proves that Republicans are willing to compromise. I get that there are some hardliners, and the hardliners don't want compromise, but I feel like the vast majority of Americans are over this divisiveness. They're over this deep partisanship that has divided us, and they want the two parties to find a way to find common ground and work together. That's what J.D. Vance and Donald Trump are doing when they talk to a union that has historically endorsed Democrats. Now, again, one of the reasons that Democrat influencers are gloating about J.D. Vance being booed is because they want to score cheap political points. You see, there's this cliche, or this, I can't think of the word, perception or assumption that firefighters are, they get lumped into the same group as police officers, right? And Donald Trump and Republicans generally are very pro-police, pro-military. And so what Democrats are trying to do is they're trying to say, well, hey, take a look at these emergency workers booing the Republicans. Ha, 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 that's a bad thing. Well, IAFF, even though it's the largest unit of firefighters, doesn't even represent all, it's not even half. So IAFF, the International Association of Firefighters, represents over 349,000 full-time professional firefighters. Well, how many firefighters are there in the nation? According to FEMA, and on their .gov website, over 1.2 million firefighters nationwide. So IAFF doesn't even represent 400,000. In other words, they don't even represent a third of all firefighters. So, a third of firefighters booing J.D. Vance or being hostile is not really the slam dunk insult, nail in the coffin that the mainstream media and influencers like Midas Touch are trying to make it out to be. Now, again, what I said earlier is that the boos actually turned to cheers for J.D. Vance once he started talking about policy. And this is proof that Republicans and conservatives have the issues on their side if they can stay on message and if they can articulate what the Republican vision, what the conservative vision would be for the country and what that means for us in our daily lives as citizens, then they usually win people over. Take a look at this clip.
We will respect your right to engage in collective bargaining. And this is important too. We're going to defend your right to free speech, including your right to speak out about unconstitutional COVID vaccine mandates imposed by the current administration. We're going to abolish every single mandate, and we're going to fight to rehire every firefighter who was wrongly terminated with all the back pay that they deserve.
And J.D. Vance isn't saying this right here, but there is a strong undercurrent that is fighting back and undermining the Democrat argument, right? Because when it comes to abortion, which I know seems totally unrelated to this right now, but when it comes to abortion, Democrats like to say, my body, my choice, or they like to say bodily autonomy. Well, what about vaccines? Now, it's not that I have anything to say about vaccines, but I do believe that that should be a personal choice. That's not something that should be forced upon by the government or forced upon by your employers. And I think it's totally unfair that people got fired, for not taking the vaccine for personal reasons, for religious reasons. It doesn't matter the reason. That is true bodily autonomy. That is true my body, my choice, because that literally is your body. What you put into your body, if you don't have any control over that, then what do you have control over? Abortion's totally different because abortion has to do, you're now involving another being. Sure, that other being is inside someone else's body, but you're not making a decision just for yourself. You're making a decision for another human at its earliest stage of development.
We're going to deliver the equipment and the funding, the support and respect you all need to do your job. And we're going to seal that border and stop the flood of fentanyl that is poisoning our citizens and endangering each and every single one of you when you go to work. And here's another promise. We're going to protect your pensions because heroes like you deserve to retire with dignity and to enjoy the blessings of the country that you helped build and help protect. And it's not just words, it's not just promises that I'm making. I am actually a co-sponsor of the Social Security Fairness Act, and I'm proud of it. I think it's ridiculous to penalize our firefighters in retirement for doing the right thing and fighting for our communities.
That's another thing. Did you notice how J.D. Vance is talking about his actual record, talking about his experience, and something like that, what he just claimed, I co-sponsored a bill. Well, we all have Google. That's something you can fact check. You know what I mean? So J.D. Vance is actually leaning into his record, leaning to what he's done to make his case as to why people should vote for him. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris is avoiding her record. In fact, not only does she have the record of being the most liberal senator, but she was absent from the Senate so many times. She didn't participate in so many votes. So not only was she the most liberal, but she also played hooky. Is that really... you know, we went through 4 years of Joe Biden going to the beach, of Joe Biden eating ice cream, of him having a vacation in his Delaware beach house, because you know what? That's so normal and so relatable for everyday Americans who have to work to put food on the table. Meanwhile, you know, his current underling, who is tethered to him, if you guys get that joke, let me know in the comments below, tethered to him, she also has played hooky. I don't think, you know, Kamala Harris is a lot younger, but I don't think she would be much better as far as work ethic and being present in the White House as Joe Biden is right now. So again, that is just great. J.D. Vance won the crowd over. Let me know what you think. Do you agree with my assessment that it was a good thing that he was booed? Again, my assessment here is that this union, like most unions, leans to the left, and it's a good thing he was booed because I think they would have booed any Republican, and it means that Trump Vance are really trying to work with other people who have different viewpoints to try to win over people who might have never thought about voting Republican or might have never thought about voting for Donald Trump. I mean, we talk about unity all the time. Isn't that what you want? A president who tries to reach across the aisle to people who don't agree with you. To me, that's a good thing. And that gives me hope for the future of the country. Now, there are a lot of other things. Well, actually, MSNBC, before we talk about the other things, they tried to cover all of this. I'm not going to comment on this clip after I play it because I'd like to think I've thoroughly debunked it. But here's how MSNBC covered J.D. Vance getting booed.
If J.D. Vance went in front of a bunch of crazy, I'm going to say this crazy sort of MAGA folks and got booed because he was taking a more moderate stance, that would actually help the Trump ticket if he was booed in that way and appealed to swing voters. But being booed by firefighters is the same thing as being booed by teachers. It's never a good thing in this. I think the problem with J.D. Vance, and we've seen this from the day Donald Trump nominated him, he seems very tone deaf and have an inability to really connect with any kind of audience in any way, whether it's an...
Want to talk about tone deaf? Tone deaf is when most Americans are struggling. They feel like the economy is against them, like their dollar isn't going as far as it used to, because it isn't. Fun fact. The tone deaf person is Harris and Tim Walz, trying to say that we're in the middle of a joy revolution, and Tim Walz coming out there dancing, high kicking his legs like he's like auditioning for like the Christmas dancers, the Christmas Rockettes or something. You know what I mean? Just totally ridiculous.
Audience like this, a larger audience, or a speech, a big convention speech, or even just a one-on-one at a store, he seems to have a great inability to have some real connection with people that people find genuine and authentic and will relate to. That's not an advanced person problem. That's an advanced person's nightmare.
Yeah, that's just crazy. Now, 3 more stories I want to talk about in this video. Number 1, now that college and schools are back in session, the anti-Israel, pro-Gaza, pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian protests are back in full force. Here's what it looked like in Cornell, at Cornell. It wasn't just Cornell. At the University of Michigan, a huge crowd showed up. So, again, she's wearing a face mask. There were two groups that showed up. That's why it got violent. There were anti-Israel and then pro-Israel protesters at University of Campus. Again, the school year has just started. I mean, this was really ramping up, right, in April and May, and then it went away. We forgot about this story over the summer when all students went home, and classes have just now started again, and these protests, as you saw from the University of Michigan, are already turning violent. That does not bode well for the Democrats as September and October go into full gear. Here's McGill University, where they actually vandalized their lawn. Absolutely crazy, and also in places that you wouldn't expect it's happening. The University of Texas, of course, a pretty red state. Hopefully it stays red, but University of Texas at Austin also saw protests. I do have a prediction. I think that these protests will intensify the closer we get to the election. And I think, Kamala Harris's CNN interview was widely panned. But don't underestimate the pro-Hamas, pro-Gaza, anti-Israel crowd and them getting angry at Kamala's answers during the interview about Israel and about a ceasefire. She fumbled everything. And then she also cut off, and I don't want to use the wrong word. I'll just say it. She pissed off. I know I have a few people who don't like it when I say that word, but she pissed off that segment of her voting base. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. And Nate Silver, by the way, has updated his forecast again. So just yesterday, he updated it. So Donald Trump has a 52% chance or probability, I want to be very clear, 52% probability of winning the election. Well, he updated, and that was the first time in a month that Trump retook the lead. Well, he updated it again. It has increased from 52% to today, 55.1%. So this is, again, really leaning heavily, the trajectory is leaning towards Trump. You can see Nate Silver is projecting now that Pennsylvania is leaning Trump. Michigan and Wisconsin have turned lighter blue. He is projecting a tight race in the Electoral College, 270 to 267. And Nate Silver, if you want to take a look at it here, the latest one, again, 55.1. And you can see Trump has kept going up ever since Nate Silver projected that Trump had risen again to 52% probability. So in just 24 hours, Trump's odds, his chances have gone up 3%. And this is based on new polling that has come out. Now, I want to be fair and balanced. RCP, on the other hand, Real Clear Politics, is claiming a close race, but in the other direction, that Harris-Walz will be 270 and Trump Vance will be 268. But there is one issue with the RCP average that I take issue with, and it's actually the same issue that Nate Silver has, and that's why Nate Silver's analysis is different from RCP's. And this is Pennsylvania. You'll notice that there's only one poll that shows Harris ahead. I know there's technically two. There's the Quinnipiac poll at the bottom. But if you'll notice the date, that was August 8th through August 12th, so much earlier in the month. What RCP, Real Clear Politics, does is they have a rolling average for, they average all the polls within the last month. And so Quinnipiac hasn't yet fallen off their radar, whereas Nate Silver takes a look at more recent polls. So Quinnipiac, I discard that just because it's so old. And then I do have a problem with the other poll that shows Harris up 4. It's the Bloomberg Morning Consult poll. And even though that's recent, the reason I have an issue with that, take a look at the sample size. It's 803 registered voters. It's not LV, which is likely voters. So the closer we get to the election, we want to look at likely voters, the people most likely to turn up and go out to the polls. And virtually every poll that does likely voters, you see Trump ahead, or in one case a tie, versus Bloomberg Morning Consult only having registered voters, and Harris is up 4. So there's that. Now, one more story before we go for the day. I don't know if you guys have seen this. This is security cam footage from Aurora, Colorado, and what you're seeing on your screen is a gang, a Venezuelan gang known as TDA, and they apparently have taken over this entire apartment complex in Aurora. They've displaced the residents there, and the apartment owners can't get control of their apartment again. Now, the mayor initially denied that this was a thing, initially denied it was going on, but the Denver Gazette, a local news organization there, reports that the mayor finally came around and admitted it's an issue. Aurora Mayor Mike Kaufman admits Venezuelan gangs infiltrate apartment complexes in the city. This even made it into the New York Post. Colorado City seeking order to evict Venezuelan gang members that overtook apartment buildings. And you'll notice it's multiple buildings. As I was able to research, it sounds like 2 apartment complexes were completely taken over, and that every single room is now being occupied by gang members now wielding weapons of war within them. And then, so 2 completely taken over, and then there are actually other apartments that are slowly losing ground. Like they might have a few, like a dozen or so rooms occupied, and they're slowly losing ground. So they're trying to get a handle on it. The Daily Mail confirms, and it's embarrassing that this even went international. Colorado governor, this is the original claim, claims Aurora's migrant gang takeover is just imagination, despite video. So again, like I said, he's finally admitted it, but at first he was denying it. He was gaslighting his citizens and the rest of the country, saying it was just imagination. And then once the video went viral and, you know, so much focus and attention went to Aurora and people were like, what's happening? Then he admitted that it actually is an issue. There are 2 things I want to point out. Number one, this gang, which came over the border illegally and is literally carrying weapons of war and has taken over entire complexes. This isn't a border state. Colorado isn't a border state. It's not like this is California, Texas, or like any of the states down there, right? And so, like, this is really scary because it shows how far inland that these gangs are penetrating and able to seemingly create their own autonomous zones. Second of all, how much more terrifying that this happened organically, but Democrat leaders such as New York City, San Francisco are housing migrants on taxpayer dimes in 5-star hotels. I mean, sooner or later, people are going to become dependent on the government. And I get that many already are, but they're going to become dependent on the government, and they're going to be entitled. They're going to feel entitled to these benefits that the rest of us have to pay for. I find it very disturbing. Anyways, all of this, of course, is just my analysis, just my opinion, and I would love to know yours in the comments below. Again, the original question, the theme of this video, what do you think about JD Vance getting booed? Do you agree or disagree with my assessment that it was a good thing that he was booed? Let me know down in the comments below, or if you have any thoughts on any of the other stories I shared. If you haven't already, please be sure to give me a thumbs up. I know it's a simple thing to ask, but it really does help me in the algorithm to reach more viewers like you. Be sure to smash that subscribe button and to check out one of these videos.